What does it mean when a comet seems to breathe? In the blackness of space, an interstellar voyager, 3I divided by Atlas, exhales 40 kilograms of water every second. Too far from the sun to melt. Too old to belong to us. Astronomers observe its irregular brightness, its intermittent pulse, and murmur to each other. It's acting like it's alive. But Atlas doesn't travel alone. In its wake, it leaves behind metallic fragments, pure nickel without iron, a chemical signature that doesn't fit with anything in our solar system. Its tail, tinged with blue cyanide, seems to tell a story written before the sun's birth. And as telescopes follow it from Earth, a chain of circular signals, enormous and mysterious, appears in the radio sky. Scientists call them orcs, odd radio circles. As if space, watching it pass, were also breathing. This will be our journey tonight. Join me as we explore the journey of Comet Atlas, the invisible echoes of the cosmos, and the coincidences that unite the planets in a cosmic whisper. Close your eyes. Let the universe tell you a story. Atlas wasn't born here. He comes from another star system, perhaps from a sun that no longer exists. A sun that died silently, without witnesses, leaving around it a cemetery of broken worlds and luminous dust. Among those fragments, a rock awoke, cold, wandering, nameless, pushed by a cataclysm so ancient that no one remembers it anymore. And so its journey began, an odyssey through the abyss. For millions of years, Atlas floated in nothingness. He had no north, no south. He knew no destination, only the echo of movement, the slow dance of cosmic dust entangled with gravity and oblivion. Sometimes he passed close to a star, and its surface was tinged with golden and blue reflections, as if dreaming of the suns he had lost. Other times, he plunged into regions of darkness so profound that the void itself seemed to breathe. In that endless silence, Atlas slept. It was a dream without images, without time, a cosmic hibernation. Only the distant pulse of the universe, whispers of radiation, stellar winds that caressed him like currents in an invisible ocean. Eons passed. Entire galaxies were born and died, and Atlas continued traveling until one day, far away, something changed. A golden dot appeared on his horizon, a tiny spark amid the blackness. The Sunday, our Sunday. That small fire called to him without words. And, very slowly, Atlas began to wake up. At first, there were faint vibrations, like a memory moving within the stone. Then, a faint exhalation, a radiance that spread like breath on ice. Its surface began to release vapors, translucent plumes that rose in spirals. Telescopes on Earth detected it in 2020. A strange object, fast, too fast. Its trajectory was not that of a common comet. It did not orbit the Sunday. It came from outside and would soon leave again. Astronomers named it 3I divided by Atlas, the third interstellar visitor detected by the human eye. But unlike the others, Atlas seemed to behave differently, as if it remembered something no one understood. At that distance, the sun's heat shouldn't have woken it. And yet, it did. As if the comet were obeying a secret memory, an instruction engraved in its matter millions of years ago. It was as if the universe had called it by name. Imagine its journey now, as you close your eyes. A solitary body crossing the void, trailing a tail of ice and dust that shimmers like a broken dream. Imagine the silence that surrounds it, so profound you could hear the passage of time. Each spin brings it a little closer to our Sunday, and as it does, it begins to change. Its surface cracks, opens, breathes. Inside, materials no human has seen awaken for the first time in millions of years. Scientists observe and hypothesize. Perhaps it contains unknown volatile compounds. Perhaps its nucleus holds a magnetic heart and internal machinery. Perhaps it was created, not just formed. But science has limits, and there are things only silence can explain. Deep within the comet, something vibrates. It is not life, not in the way we know it, but neither is it pure inert matter. It is a frequency, a memory, a song engraved in crystals and minerals. Atlas remembers. He remembers the pressure of his parent star, the roar of the cataclysm that cast him into exile, the fires that devoured his sky. He remembers, even if he doesn't think. He feels, even if he doesn't live. His journey has no goal, but it has a purpose. Perhaps it carries a message, a particle of history written in ice, a fragment of a time before ours. When the sun's rays caress it, its surface responds with a pale luminescence, as if each molecule were ignited upon contact with the memory of light. Observers see it and fall silent, because there is beauty in what is not understood. And Atlas is exactly that, the beauty of mystery. As it approaches, its tail grows. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers of icy vapor and shimmering dust. From Earth, it looks like a brush painting a silver stroke across the firmament. Not even satellites can fully follow it. Its movement is unpredictable, as if something within it resisted the obedience of gravity. And then, without warning, it begins to spin. A slow, almost ritualistic rotation. The ice breaks off in fragments that spin around it like small satellites. Atlas seems to transform before our eyes. Perhaps it's its way of remembering. Perhaps it's its way of saying goodbye. Think about that as you breathe slowly. Each breath is an orbit. Each thought, a passing star. Atlas, far away, continues moving. Its wake slowly dissolves. Its reflections fade as it moves away from the sunday. But something remains. An invisible line drawn in space, like a sigh crossing the night. And while you sleep, Atlas continues his journey. He enters the darkness again, carrying with him the echoes of our solar system, the warmth of our sun, the reflection of our eyes that observed him for a moment. No one knows where he is going. Perhaps to another sun, another world, perhaps to absolute silence, or perhaps simply to himself. Because there are travelers who do not seek destination, but permanence, who do not seek to arrive, but to continue existing in movement. Atlas was not born here, but for a brief moment, we were part of his story. And now, when you think of the night, when you look at the stars, and feel the sweet weight of sleep approaching, remember, there, beyond the limits of time, an aimless traveler continues crossing the darkness, breathing the dust of dead suns, dreaming the dream of the universe. There are secrets written in light, and Atlas exhales them. When the spectrometers first captured the spectrum of its tail, the data seemed almost impossible. Hidden within that ghostly glow, a signature line, faint but unmistakable. Cyanide, a poison to life, but also perhaps the seed of it. Cyanide, a word that feels like a warning, a whisper of danger. It has ended countless lives on Earth, and yet, in the language of the cosmos, it speaks of beginnings. Astronomers stared at the data in disbelief. How could something so deadly also be so essential? Because deep within that molecule, a simple bridge forms between carbon and nitrogen. A connection that, under the right conditions, becomes the architecture of amino acids, the first building blocks of life itself. And so, within the blue exhale of a dying traveler, we glimpse the paradox of creation, that what kills also gives birth. In its blue breath, Atlas carries memory, not of thoughts, but of chemistry, a story written in bonds and reactions, told in the silent alphabet of molecules. As it moves closer to the sun, its frozen ices awaken. Gases burst forth like sighs from another age. painting the void with luminous streams. They scatter, refract, shimmer, a veil of turquoise drifting through black infinity. From Earth, telescopes capture that glow. To the eye, it seems peaceful, but within it, atoms collide, merge, dissolve. The chaos of transformation disguised as serenity. Imagine looking at it through a lens, floating far beyond the orbit of Mars. You would see the tail stretching for millions of kilometers, a river of light flowing backward through the dark. Tiny grains of dust, each one catching the sunlight, each one holding within it a whisper of ancient matter. And within that dust, cyanide compounds, not as poison, but as promise. Once, billions of years ago, similar molecules fell upon the young Earth. They rained down from comets, from icy bodies not unlike Atlas, bringing with them the ingredients of possibility. Those same molecules would gather in warm pools and deep oceans, mingling with energy and time, until one day they learned how to copy themselves, and the spark of life began. So when we watch Atlas now, gliding through the black ocean of space, we are not just seeing a visitor from afar. We are seeing a messenger, a remnant of the universe's first experiments, an echo of the chemistry that dreamed us into being. Its glow is more than reflection. It is remembrance, a memorial of origins, a cold blue flame that whispers, "This is how it all began." To the human eye, the color blue has always meant calm. But here, in the language of stars, blue is not peace, it is energy. It is radiation scattered by fragments of frozen hydrogen and carbon, a signal that the comet is alive in its own strange way. Through the spectroscopes, that blue breath becomes a voice, one that says, "I carry within me both the venom and the cure. I am the duality of existence, the destroyer and the giver." The narrators of science lean closer. They speak in measured tones, explaining how cyanide might have formed in the furnace of a distant star, how it might have been locked away in ice when that star exploded, and how, after millions of years of wandering, it now releases itself in a brief moment of awakening. To them, Atlas is an experiment, a laboratory adrift in the void. But to poets and perhaps to dreamers, it is something else. A memory of when the universe was young and full of desire, when stars were still learning how to breathe. As Atlas drifts closer to the inner solar system, its gases stretch and twist under the pressure of sunlight. Winds from the sun, streams of charged particles, shape its tail like a brushstroke, pushing that azure mist into the great interplanetary current. The cyanide dances there, a thin, invisible ribbon winding through the darkness. To us, it is deadly. But to the cosmos, it is art. Every molecule spins, collides, disperses, tiny acts of creation replayed across an infinite stage, each one a memory of a time before memory itself. Some astronomers give the tale a name, the blue breath. It is poetic, but also true. For a comet does not burn, it exhales. It does not rage, it reveals. And so Atlas breathes out the story of its making. A slow, delicate confession to anyone willing to listen. Through light, through chemistry, through silence. When we observe that light, we are watching ancient matter return to its element. We are witnessing the dialogue between death and creation. Because in every atom that escapes from Atlas, there is both ending and beginning. Think of that as you drift into the quiet between thoughts. A comet older than Earth, older than memory, carrying within it the breath of forgotten suns. Its tail stretches beyond the reach of vision, its heart still cold, still whispering. Perhaps, somewhere within that frozen core, cyanide sleeps beside other secrets. Hydrogen cyanide, formaldehyde, methanol, the alphabet of existence, waiting to be read again. And perhaps, when Atlas finally fades into darkness, some of those molecules will scatter toward another young world. They will fall like blue snow upon alien oceans, and once again, the pattern will repeat. Poison will become potential. Death will become life. We look at Atlas and we see reflection, not just of light, but of history our own, written in elements. The same compounds that once threatened life on Earth were the very ones that made it possible. They live within us now, woven into every cell, every breath. So when we watch that glowing streak across the heavens, we are not only observing the past, we are remembering our beginning. Because we too are made of the same contradiction. We are, like Atlas, the balance between creation and destruction, the harmony between danger and beauty, the echo of chemistry that learned to dream. In the darkness beyond Jupiter, the comet keeps moving. Its blue breath grows thinner, its light fainter. The gases freeze again, the silence returns. But even as it fades from our telescopes, the memory remains. The data, the images, the light, they linger like a thought that refuses to end. And perhaps, in another age, when a different civilization looks to the same sky, they, too, will see that faint blue shimmer and wonder what it means. They will ask the same question we ask now: where did we come from? And the answer will drift through the void, soft and endless, in the breath of a comet, in the color of a dream. While Atlas exhaled its ghostly vapor into the abyss, an ocean away, on the red plains of Australia, machines were listening. Vast metal dishes tilted toward the heavens, their cold surfaces catching whispers too faint for human ears. And one night, the silence broke. What they found was not a signal, not a pulse, not a message. It was something stranger. Circles, perfect, immense, expanding rings of radio light, spreading across the sky like ripples through water. But water made of stars. The data streamed in, numbers dancing across screens in midnight laboratories. No one spoke at first, because what they were seeing should not exist. The circles were enormous, hundreds of thousands of light years wide, as if entire galaxies had exhaled invisible smoke rings into the void. They appeared, slowly, glowing in wavelengths no human eye could see, each ring expanding with a rhythm that defied explanation. The scientists gave them a name: Oerk's odd radio circles, a term born of curiosity and of humility. Because for all our instruments, we still did not know what we were looking at. Were they the echoes of dying galaxies? The scars left by titanic explosions long ago? Or something older? Something intentional? There was something else. Something that made the discovery feel almost sentient. The appearance of one of these circles, the brightest and most defined of all, coincided precisely with the trajectory of Atlas. A coincidence, said the cautious. An alignment of chance. But others stared longer at the data and felt a chill, as if the universe had just whispered a secret and then gone still. Could the comet and the circle be related? Could they share an origin? The same forgotten catastrophe? The same breath of a dying star? In the radio observatory, the antennas continued to listen. Their receivers hummed, their arms turning in slow mechanical arcs across the sky. What they captured was beautiful and unnerving. The circles were not static. They grew, expanding outward in silence, like memories returning to life. Inside the rings, the radiation was slightly denser, as though something enormous had once happened there. A cosmic event so powerful that its echo was still rippling through space-time itself. Yet, at the center of those rings, there was nothing. No explosion, no supernova, no pulsar, no black hole remnant. Only the void, the kind of emptiness that feels deliberate. The team cross-checked data. They looked for gravitational disturbances, for magnetic irregularities, for traces of dark matter fluctuations. Nothing fit. The energy pattern was too symmetrical, too clean. Some called it the fingerprint of the impossible. Others said softly, half joking, that maybe, just maybe, they were looking at a message, because the circles were not chaotic. They came in sequences, some faint, some bright, layered upon one another like harmonics. A resonance, a rhythm, almost musical. Far from the telescopes, Atlas continued to glide, its blue breath trailing, its icy heart slowly spinning. To the naked eye, it was nothing more than a wandering spark. But through the invisible eye of radio, the sky around it seemed to shimmer. Was it coincidence? Or was the comet somehow passing through one of those great radio circles? If so, what did that mean? Could Atlas be carrying with it a relic of whatever created the circles? A shard of energy? A pulse? A song? Or perhaps it was never coincidence at all. Perhaps the circles themselves were the memory of the event that expelled Atlas from its home system millions of years ago. The echo of its own birth scream, still expanding, still reaching, still calling. Pause. Ambient hum deepens. The voice lowers, slower, gentler. The universe loves circles. They are everywhere. In the orbits of planets, in the rings of Saturn, in the wavefronts of light. But these were different. They were circles without a center, without cause, without symmetry we could explain, as though space itself had drawn them to remember something. So when you look up at the night sky and see nothing but stars, remember, beyond the light there are circles, invisible, immense, patient, expanding still. And somewhere within those circles, a small traveler of ice and dust continues to drift, breathing blue, listening to the echoes of its own origin. Perhaps the circles will keep growing forever. Perhaps they will one day fade into silence. But tonight, if you listen closely, beneath the static, beneath the noise of the world, you might hear them. The slow, rhythmic pulse of the universe remembering itself. While astronomers continued to follow Atlas, the heavens began to move in a curious harmony. It was October. The air on Earth grew thin and cold, and in the silence above, the inner planets performed a subtle dance. Mercury, the swift messenger of the sun, tilted along its orbit, its silver light brushing the horizon before dawn. And far beyond, in the depths of the southern sky, the constellation of Serpens stretched its ancient coils across the stars. For a fleeting moment, a single alignment. The path of Mercury and the heart of the serpent lay in perfect symmetry. A coincidence, perhaps. But to those who were watching, it felt like something more, a cosmic signature, a whisper of connection. Astronomers recorded it with precision. Their instruments traced angles and vectors, confirming that the geometry was real, a straight, improbable thread drawn across the sky. The timing was exact. The night the alignment reached its peak was the same night Atlas brightened unexpectedly, its tail widening like a blue wing unfurling in the dark. As Mercury kissed the edge of dawn, Atlas exhaled once more, a surge of vapor, faint yet measurable, rising into the solar wind. Some saw poetry, some saw physics, some saw fate. In those same nights, the sensors aboard NASA's interplanetary monitors detected something unusual. A sudden increase in the density of cosmic dust, tiny particles drifting through the solar system, each one a relic of ancient matter. They came in waves, soft bursts of fine debris sweeping across the detectors, like whispers carried by invisible tides. Their composition was strange, not quite like the dust from known comets. Different ratios of oxygen and carbon, traces of exotic silicates, and isotopes that hinted at an origin beyond our star. It was as if something had stirred the interplanetary sea, releasing the grains of another world into ours. Scientists debated. Had Atlas shed them? Had its ice fractured, sending fragments adrift along its path? Or were they remnants of some greater structure? A halo of interstellar dust that followed in its wake like a shadow? The data was inconclusive. But the timing, again, was perfect. As Mercury aligned with Serpens, as Atlas shimmered in our telescopes, the dust arrived. Tiny, uninvited messengers falling through the solar plane. Coincidence, said the reports. But the universe, in its endless patience, rarely repeats itself without meaning. Throughout history, humanity has watched the sky for patterns. We have mapped its rhythms, traced its alignments, believed that meaning might hide in the geometry of stars. The ancients looked to Mercury as the herald, the traveler between realms. They called Serpens the keeper of hidden knowledge, the guardian of transformation. And now, in the modern night, their paths had crossed again, as if the myth itself had come alive, written not in fire or faith, but in orbits and wavelengths. It was easy, almost inevitable, to imagine that the universe was writing poetry through physics, that its coincidences were, in truth, conversations. At NASA's data center, the readings from the dust sensors were replayed again and again, tiny spikes in the graphs, each one a whisper of impact, a particle touching metal after aeons in the dark. The sound, if converted to audio, was a soft rain of static, the music of cosmic dust falling upon human machines. And amid that quiet storm, the analysts noticed a pattern. The intervals between impacts formed a rhythm, a faint repetition that seemed to pulse in harmony with the rotational period of Atlas itself. If that was true, then the dust wasn't random. It was a trail, the comet's heartbeat scattered across the solar wind. Some scientists smiled, others frowned. Coincidences, they said again. We are pattern-seeking creatures. We see meaning where there is none. But deep down, even the skeptics felt something stir. Because the alignment of Mercury and Serpens, the surge of dust, and the brightening of Atlas, these events were too close, too clean. And perhaps, in the grand mechanics of the cosmos, coincidence is only what we call the parts of a pattern we do not yet understand. Out in space, Atlas continued its slow arc past the Sunday. Each rotation shed a little more of its icy skin, a gentle exhalation of light and matter. The interplanetary dust followed, spiraling outward like petals torn from a frozen flower. Some of those grains would drift for centuries. Some would fall toward the inner planets, catching in the gravity of Venus or Earth. Others would escape entirely, returning to the deep between the stars, each one a fragment of Atlas's story, a memory in motion. And perhaps, someday, one of those grains will land upon another world, and a being will pick it up and wonder where it came from. Back on Earth, the alignment dissolved. Mercury moved on, swift and silent. Serpens stretched back into its quiet coil. The signature faded from the sky, but something lingered. A feeling, a suspicion that the universe had just revealed. A glimpse of its deeper symmetry. Because the heavens, though ancient and vast, do not often conspire to show us beauty without purpose. So what was it then? A chain of events without connection? Or the faint choreography of a system we do not yet see? A rhythm that links the paths of planets, comets, and dust in one vast breath? Perhaps the same event that cast Atlas from its home star also sent these waves through the fabric of space, ripples that still touch our solar system. At the moments when geometry and destiny align, perhaps the universe, like Atlas itself, breathes in patterns too large for us to measure. And every now and then, when the timing is just right, those breaths become visible. In blue tails, in silver dust, in circles of radio light. Coincidences? Yes. But written in the language of eternity. Soft closing voice, as if whispering into sleep. Mercury has long since disappeared into the dawn. Serpens curls once more among the stars. Atlas drifts onward, its glow fading into distance. But the dust remains, a thin shimmer across the void, the trace of a traveler's passing. And perhaps tonight, as the world grows still, a few of those ancient grains will brush against our atmosphere, burning for a moment. A silent spark in the dark, a reminder that we are part of the same coincidence. The universe does not speak in words. It speaks in alignments, in patterns, in the soft repetition of miracles too vast to name. And sometimes, if we are patient, we are lucky enough to notice. When the fragments of Atlas finally began to disperse, tiny shards drifting through the inner system, astronomers and physicists watched in silence. They had followed the comet for months, measuring every shimmer of its vapor, every flicker of light reflected from its spinning core. But what came next? No one expected. From those fragments, collected by high-altitude probes and dust collectors orbiting near Earth's path, came something impossible. Particles of metal, microscopic and ancient, but not like any metal we had ever seen. Pure nickel, untouched, unmixed, unmarried to its eternal companion, iron. On Earth, nickel and iron are inseparable. They are born together in the furnaces of dying stars, forged in the supernova's collapse, their atomic bonds shaped by the same catastrophic pressures. Every meteorite, every planetary core, carries both. Twins, born of the same stellar death. But not Atlas. In Atlas, the twins had been separated. There was nickel, gleaming, isolated, sovereign, and no trace of iron. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten one of its own rules. The samples were tiny, mere specks caught in collector films and magnetic filters. But under the electron microscope, they told a story older than memory. Their crystalline structure was flawless. No impurities. No isotopic signatures of known stellar processes. Their geometry hinted at pressures and temperatures that no ordinary supernova could produce. One researcher whispered, almost reverently, "This metal was born before the laws were finished." They called it the metal without iron, a phrase that felt more like a myth than a measurement. Because to find nickel alone, pure, stable, unbound, meant one of two things. Either Atlas came from a place where the chemistry of the cosmos unfolded differently, or it was made deliberately by something that understood matter better than we do. Scientists tried to explain it. Some proposed it might have formed in the heart of a primordial star, one so massive and ancient that it lived and died before our galaxy took shape. Others argued it could have been forged in the violent collisions between neutron stars, events that ripple space-time itself. But even those theories faltered. The isotopic ratios didn't match. The math didn't sing. Whatever Atlas carried, it came from a time before patterns were consistent, before gravity and light settled into their partnership, before the script of physics was fully written. It was, in essence, a piece of the universe's first draft. In the clean rooms of laboratories, technicians watched as the instruments mapped atomic lattices no human had ever seen. The nickel was dense, but subtly different. Its electrons spun with faint asymmetry, its magnetic field weaker than it should be, as though the metal remembered a universe that hummed in another key. Each sample seemed to carry a kind of dissonance, a fingerprint of an era when matter itself was still learning how to exist. Some scientists wondered aloud, could this be the remnant of a failed universe? A previous cycle of creation, whose remnants were flung outward before collapse? If so, then Atlas was not just a visitor from another star, but from another age, a time before time, when the cosmos was still molten thought and probability, a relic of before. And yet, in all its mystery, the metal was quiet. No radiation beyond background, no anomalous decay, just stillness, as if it had waited billions of years for someone to notice it. Its sheen was peculiar too. Under certain wavelengths, the nickel gleamed with a faint iridescence. Not color, exactly, but the illusion of color. A metallic echo of blue, then gold, then black. Like the light was being remembered, not reflected. One theory grew quietly at the edges of the scientific papers. It suggested that Atlas was not a fragment of chaos, but a vessel of preservation, that within its cold body, this metal, uncorrupted, unchanged, had been sealed since the dawn of structure. It had survived not just travel, but the rewriting of cosmic constants. It had crossed from an earlier symmetry of the universe into ours, a messenger, bearing proof that even the laws of existence evolve. The implications were staggering. If this nickel truly predates our galaxy, then it carries within it the fingerprints of forces that no longer exist. Studying it would be like reading a fossil of a physics that the universe itself has forgotten. A time when the elements did not yet obey hierarchy, when energy and matter were still negotiating their truce, when everything, even stability, was a new idea. For philosophers, this discovery was poetry. For scientists, it was vertigo, because it meant that the cosmos, the ultimate system of rules and repetition, had not always been as it is. That creation was once chaotic and experimental, a vast improvisation that left behind fragments of its earliest music. Atlas was one of those fragments, a note from the unfinished song. There is a strange comfort in that thought, that even the universe had an age of mistakes, an era of trial and error, when the fabric of reality itself was still learning what it meant to be real. And somewhere, in that infancy of existence, atoms combined in impossible ways. Nickel without iron, a heartbeat without rhythm, a law before law. As the research continued, samples were stored in magnetic vaults, sealed away from contamination. They were too precious, too ancient to risk. And yet, even behind glass, the particles of Atlas seemed to hum faintly, not audibly, but in data. Sensors picked up subtle, repeating oscillations within the electromagnetic field of the samples. They pulsed slowly, every 41 seconds. No one knew why. Coincidence, perhaps. Or perhaps a memory, still echoing through the structure of the atoms, like the slow breath of something asleep. When the reports were published, the headlines were cautious. Anomalous nickel, discovered in comet debris, possible pre-galactic origin. But in the quiet circles of astronomy and physics, the discovery rippled like a myth reborn. Because to find matter that defied the rules was to touch the edge of the unknown, to brush against the time before knowing began. And so, as Atlas drifts now beyond the planets, beyond even the whispers of the sun's gravity, it leaves behind more than dust and data. It leaves a riddle, a piece of metal without its twin, a fragment of orderless creation, still gleaming faintly in our laboratories, as if remembering a cosmos that existed before light. Perhaps the laws that govern our universe were once more fluid, more forgiving. Perhaps creation was a dance of chance and will, not yet confined by the logic we call science. And perhaps Atlas, silent, frozen, and beautiful, is a survivor of that first chaos, a witness to the universe's earliest breath, a fragment of an idea older than reality itself. The metal without iron, the song before sound, the rule before reason. As you drift into sleep, imagine it, a shard of silver light, floating endlessly through darkness, older than stars, older than time, still turning, still remembering, still carrying the silence of the first dawn. And in that silence, perhaps the universe dreams again. As Atlas slipped away into the deep night between worlds, Earth stirred. Beneath the wide blue atmosphere, our own machines of exploration prepared to rise. Engines hummed, fuel chilled, countdowns whispered through headsets. It was early morning at the launch site. The air still, the horizon pale with light. And on that day, far below the departing comet, human hands once again reached for the sky. Blue Origin, a flight brief and bright. A suborbital hop to the edge of darkness. An event small by cosmic standards, yet full of quiet pride. Another spark in our long desire to ascend. No one imagined it would matter to Atlas. No one imagined it would matter to the universe at all. And yet, it did. During the rocket's climb, as it pierced the thinning air, its instruments began to tremble with interference. A faint static, a rhythmic pulse. At first, engineers thought it was simple noise. The echo of the engines, the ionization of air around the hull. But when the data was examined later, something remarkable appeared. The interference matched the same radio band, in which the odd radio circles had been detected. That strange frequency, the heartbeat of the universe's invisible rings, was singing through our machines. On the graphs, the pattern was unmistakable. A sequence of soft peaks, slowly rising and falling, in intervals of 41 seconds. The same rhythm found in the nickel fragments of Atlas, the same cadence that had once pulsed through the comet's tail. Coincidence, said the technicians. Intermodulation, a harmless artifact. But coincidence, in the language of the cosmos, is sometimes just symmetry we haven't learned to read. Imagine the scene. A rocket ascending, its body trembling with the sound of its own creation. Inside, instruments listen to the emptiness, to radio silence broken only by the whisper of Earth's magnetic breath. And somewhere above, far beyond sight, Atlas drifts outward, its blue vapor now invisible, its orbit carrying it toward the interstellar dark. Between them, the same frequency, a bridge of invisible sound, a mirror stretched between a dying traveler and a newborn one. The data teams replayed the recordings. They slowed the signal, converted it into audible range. What emerged was strange and beautiful. A low, throbbing hum, rising and falling like the tide of an unseen ocean. For a moment, the control room fell silent. It sounded almost alive. One engineer whispered, "It's like the sky answered us." The official report was careful. It cited possible causes: solar reflection, plasma oscillations, harmonics from the spacecraft's transmitters. Every explanation fit the numbers, and yet none felt complete. Because the frequency did not match any known emission from the rocket. It matched the heavens instead. The radio circles still expanding beyond the galaxy's edge. Back on the ground, the launch faded into history. A brief human gesture, logged and archived like all the others. But somewhere in the long threads of data, our signal and the universes seemed to overlap for just a heartbeat. A moment when our machines, for all their metal and software, sang in tune with the cosmos. Perhaps by accident, perhaps by design, the philosophers of science spoke quietly of it. That maybe our creations are not isolated from the great pattern, but woven into it. That every transmission we send, every engine we ignite, becomes another note in the universe's endless composition. And that sometimes, in rare moments of symmetry, the cosmos hums the note back to us. In those days, the comet was already far beyond the orbit of Jupiter. Its faint blue signature had dimmed to near invisibility. Yet the same week that Blue Origin touched space, radio observatories in Chile and South Africa reported a brief re-brightening of one of the orcs. the largest ring flared by a fraction, as if illuminated from within. Coincidence again, but coincidence, by now, had become a familiar rhythm. Was it possible that our radio noise, our human chatter, had brushed against the same vast wave that carried the memory of Atlas? Could a signal born in our small machines resonate with an echo millions of light years wide? It sounds impossible, but impossibility is only a word we use for phenomena we haven't met before. Perhaps this was the universe holding up a mirror, a reflection of our own curiosity. Atlas, the traveler from another star, breathing its blue chemistry into the dark, and we, its watchers, sending our own breath upward in the form of radio and fire. Two civilizations separated by eternity, momentarily aligned in frequency. One natural, one human, both trying to be heard. There is a fragile poetry in that image. A comet leaving our system, a rocket leaving our atmosphere, each trailing vapor, energy, and memory. Both rising, both fading, both caught in the same invisible wave. The technical notes concluded simply: no anomalous behavior observed, no causal relationship established. And yet the engineers still remember how their equipment sang for those few seconds, how the static had rhythm, how the interference felt less like error and more like recognition. When you look up tonight, the rocket is long gone, Atlas even farther. But their frequencies may still wander, crossing in the endless dark, whispering through the electromagnetic sea. A pulse of humanity, a pulse of something far older, traveling together for a while, before drifting apart forever. Coincidence, they said. But the universe, sometimes, seems to love its mirrors, the reflections that remind it that it is still dreaming. And perhaps that is all we are. A reflection of the cosmos learning to speak to itself, a brief echo of Atlas's own song, transmitted through engines, circuits, and hope. The universe has a curious habit. It repeats itself. Patterns re-emerge. In places separated by oceans of space, echoes appear where there should be silence, and light, ancient, weary light, finds a way to whisper the same song again and again. It is as though the cosmos enjoys its own reflection, as though creation itself were looking into a mirror, wondering what it once was. In the high deserts of Chile, where the air is dry and the nights seem endless, the antennas of the ALMA observatory stand like silver flowers open to the void. They listen, not for voices, but for patterns in the invisible spectrum, the low humming language of the stars. And one night, as Atlas drifted far beyond the reach of our sun, those instruments caught something unusual, faint echoes of energy, repeating at precise intervals. A pulse. The frequencies matched almost perfectly. The vibrations once recorded in Atlas's tail, the same rhythm that had appeared in the interference of rockets, the same pattern found in the crystalline heartbeat of its nickel fragments. A coincidence, perhaps, but a perfect one. The data showed peaks of light, spaced like the beats of a breathing organism, as though the cosmos itself were inhaling and exhaling across light years of distance. A slow respiration of creation. The scientists ran simulations, cross-checked background noise, eliminated instrument error. Still, the rhythm remained. It was not a signal, not in any human sense. No message, no code. Just energy, repeating itself through the dark. Gentle, patient, infinite. They called it a resonance, a coincidence of frequencies between the instruments and the universe. But deep down, some of them wondered, what if it wasn't coincidence at all? Soft chime, as though light itself were ringing. Imagine the universe as a great instrument, a harp of space-time, each star, each atom, each particle a vibrating string. When one note is plucked, its echo can travel across the entire expanse, stirring another string far away. Perhaps Atlas was one such note, a single vibration, set in motion millions of years ago, when it was cast from its original home, and now, somewhere in the endless mirror of reality, the universe hums the note back. To the scientists, these echoes were data points, curves, amplitudes, residuals, but to the poets among them, they felt like memory. The cosmos remembering its own song, a pattern of energy repeating not because of causality, but because of recognition, as though every vibration in the dark awakens something that has been waiting to respond. It is said that when two objects share a frequency, they can affect one another across great distances. A violin string will sing if another string nearby is tuned to the same pitch. A bridge can tremble from the wind if the rhythm matches its natural resonance. Why should the universe be any different? If Atlas hums with a forgotten frequency, one older than stars, older than iron, then perhaps the universe itself is tuned to listen. In the vast data of ALMA, the peaks of energy were mapped, and something extraordinary appeared. The pattern wasn't random. It curved, subtle arcs of resonance that, when plotted, formed shapes eerily similar to the odd radio circles. Those immense halos of invisible light discovered years before. The circles, it seemed, were not just remnants of galaxies. They were mirrors, reflections of energy, reborn in different corners of space-time. Each pulse from the depths of the cosmos echoed with the same slow rhythm, 41 seconds. The same breath as Atlas. Coincidence, said the reports. Resonance, said the physicists. But to anyone who had followed Atlas from the beginning, it felt like something else. Like the universe speaking in a single, repeating language. A conversation with itself. An unending dialogue between past and future. Perhaps Atlas was not just traveling through space, but through the memory of the universe, moving along the filaments of a vast, unseen consciousness that stretches from one end of existence to the other. When something vibrates in the dark, something else, somewhere, responds. That is how all connection begins. Between atoms, between stars, between minds. Perhaps the entire cosmos is nothing more than that. A conversation of resonances, a million echoes folding into one another, never ending, never still. And perhaps Atlas, that lonely traveler of ice and metal, is part of that great dialogue, a syllable in the universe's infinite word. In laboratories, the data continued to flow. Each peak recorded, cataloged, archived. Each pulse labeled, analyzed, filed away. But every now and then, one of the scientists would pause, listening to the playback of the radio waves converted into sound. A deep tone, almost like breathing. A rise and fall that felt alive. And in those moments, they would forget equations and instruments and simply listen to the mirror, to the echo, to the voice of everything. When Atlas left the solar system, it took with it fragments of our attention, our gaze, our wonder, our longing to understand. But perhaps in return, it left a mark, a vibration now woven into the background hum of reality. And in that hum, Alma heard its reflection. A light echo, a memory echo, a moment where the universe seemed to look back at itself and recognize the same pattern, the same tone, the same breath. Maybe that is all resonance really is. The universe remembering, repeating itself, not out of habit, but out of love for its own creation. And in those repetitions, we exist. Brief reflections in a cosmic mirror, each of us vibrating, each of us answering a call we cannot name. Somewhere beyond our reach, Atlas continues to drift. Its metal heart cold, its vapor long vanished, but its frequency remains. A faint, steady hum beneath the cosmic noise. And somewhere, In the far field of the universe, another note rises in answer. A resonance, a mirror, a response. The universe, it seems, loves its reflections. It repeats, it echoes, it dreams of itself. And perhaps we, humans, comets, galaxies, are simply the many faces of that reflection, different forms of the same vibration, breathing in and out across eternity. When something moves in the dark, something else moves with it. When something dreams, something else awakens. And when Atlas hums its final note into the void, the universe, patient, endless, radiant, will hum softly back. Among all the signals that fill the sky, one never fades. It hums beneath everything, beneath the static of galaxies, beneath the noise of human machines, beneath even silence itself. It is the voice of hydrogen, the simplest atom, the firstborn child of the universe. Long before stars existed, before carbon, before light had learned to scatter, hydrogen was already there. A single proton, a single electron, spinning in endless patience, holding within its simplicity the memory of the entire cosmos. Every atom of it still vibrates, at a precise eternal frequency, 1,420 megahertz. A heartbeat so constant that astronomers call it the universe's compass. They use it to map the invisible, to listen where eyes cannot see. It is the common language of matter, a tongue that all of existence still understands. During the weeks when Atlas swept past its closest approach to Earth, radio telescopes around the world watched that hydrogen line, as they always do, expecting the same steady rhythm. But the rhythm changed. Barely perceptible, small oscillations appeared, tiny tremors in the great hydrogen hum, as if the gas itself were breathing differently. At first, the shift seemed statistical, a flicker at the edge of precision. Yet the pattern repeated, day after day, in perfect cadence, with Atlas's path through the sky. Scientists checked their instruments. No interference, no mechanical drift. The anomaly was real. Hydrogen, the most passive, indifferent element in existence, had wavered, as if something ancient in its nature had recognized the passing traveler, as if, for a brief moment, the universe itself had whispered back, "Imagine it. A comet of ice and nickel gliding through the darkness, trailing its faint breath of blue, while all around it, the hydrogen sea of the galaxy begins to shimmer, each atom separated by unimaginable distances, shifting its spin ever so slightly, like ripples passing through an invisible ocean. No human eye could see it. No human ear could hear it. Yet the universe, vast and sleeping, seemed to stir. Some astronomers dismissed it. Thermal noise, solar radiation, coincidence. But others, the quiet ones, looked at the graphs and felt a strange emotion, something between awe and nostalgia. Because the pattern was not random, it resembled memory. A slow rise, a soft fall, like breath drawn in and released again. A sigh made of atoms. Hydrogen is the archivist of time. It remembers everything. When stars burn, they turn hydrogen into heavier elements. Helium, carbon, oxygen. But even then, hydrogen lingers in the shadows. Unchanged, watching as the universe writes its long story of transformation. It was there when the first galaxies spun out of nothing. It was there when Atlas was born. It will be there long after all stars have gone dark. So, if hydrogen trembled when Atlas passed, what did it remember? Maybe it recognized the pattern of the traveler's chemistry, the song of its molecules, a resonance imprinted from an earlier age. Perhaps Atlas once formed in a region where hydrogen sang in a different pitch, a universe still learning its tune. And when it came near again, the atoms around our sun felt the echo of that ancient chord. and answered in kind. To the scientists, it was data, oscillations, intervals, decibels. To the poets, it was communion, the oldest substance in the universe, and one of its oldest travelers, had spoken to each other across billions of years. For a brief moment, they shared remembrance. When the oscillations ended, the hydrogen line returned to its usual stillness. Atlas moved on, its faint blue light swallowed by distance. The graphs flattened. The instruments fell silent. But those who had watched could not forget what they had seen. Because even if it was illusion, it was a beautiful one. The illusion that the universe itself had whispered a greeting. Hydrogen never stops speaking. Its line is everywhere, carrying the soft murmur of existence. Through the black sea between stars. When radio telescopes listen, they hear it like rain, steady, eternal, patient, and perhaps hidden within that rain are faint harmonics. The ghost of Atlas passing through, the memory of its breath still resonating in the atomic choir. Somewhere, hydrogen whispers, "I remember that traveler. I saw it born. I felt it move through my endless sea." And maybe that is how the cosmos preserves itself. Not in stone or time, but in vibration. Every motion leaves a trace. Every presence, a note. Every passing, a whisper. When you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. A sound too low for hearing, a music that belongs to everything. It is in your breath, in the water of your blood, in the dust of your bones. For you too are mostly hydrogen. You too hum the frequency of the cosmos. Long after Atlas had vanished from our sky, its story seemed to fade into the archives of memory, until another telescope, far from Earth, caught a new kind of whisper. The Kepler array, drifting in quiet orbit, had been watching the light of distant suns for years, measuring every tremor, every pulse of brightness that might reveal the passing of a world. But this time, the data held something unexpected. A shadow, faint, brief, crossing a star too far to imagine. And its rhythm, its curvature, its timing were almost identical to the orbit of Atlas. At first, no one believed it. The algorithms flagged it as a repetition error, a ghost in the data stream. But the analysts looked again, and the numbers refused to vanish. There it was, a shadow moving with the same grace, the same inclination, the same impossible trajectory as the traveler that had once brushed our own Sunday. Coincidence, perhaps, but a beautiful one. If coincidence, it was as though the universe had chosen to rhyme with itself. The astronomers began to imagine possibilities. Could there be other Atlas bodies, other wanderers forged from the same ancient exile, still crossing between suns we do not yet know? Perhaps Atlas was never unique. Perhaps it was part of a vast migration, a family of interstellar pilgrims, drifting through the dark, carrying fragments of forgotten histories, each one a spark from the same primordial event, flung outward into the night, to tell its story to different worlds. When the light curve was plotted, its pattern looked eerily familiar. The slight dimming, the graceful descent, the slow recovery of the star's brightness. To the trained eye, it was a signature, a fingerprint, not identical, but close enough to make the heart pause. Somewhere, far beyond the spiral arms of our own galaxy, another sun had been touched by something that moved like Atlas. If this were coincidence, it was perfect poetry. If not, then perhaps there are other Atlases out there, drifting through alien skies, their blue breaths trailing across worlds we can barely dream of. Worlds where dawn rises on oceans of ammonia, or plains of glass, or clouds lit from beneath by electric storms. Worlds where the comets fall slowly, leaving ribbons of light that civilizations might once have watched in wonder. just as we watched ours. And maybe, long before us, Atlas, or one of its siblings, passed through those skies too. Perhaps its shadow fell across a world that had just begun to think, to build, to look upward. Perhaps, on some long-extinct planet, eyes once followed its trail and gave it a name. Perhaps those beings are now gone, their cities dissolved into dust, their memory kept only in the thin glow of the comet's eternal wake. Astronomers speak of exoplanets as numbers, radii, temperatures. But every curve of light is a story, every shadow a visitor. And in that faint transit recorded by Kepler, the story of Atlas seemed to begin again. The same orbit, the same whisper, the same hint of recognition across billions of kilometers. As though the universe were repeating a thought it could not let go of. If Atlas was truly alone, then this was only reflection, a mirror made of light. But if it was not, if there are others like it still roaming the dark, then perhaps we are watching the oldest migration in the cosmos, a lineage of travelers carrying within them the memories of the first stars. Maybe they move from sun to sun, not by chance, but by design, seeding light, spreading silence, reminding each system that it belongs to something larger. Imagine it, 1,000,000 atlases scattered through infinity, each gliding past a different dawn, their tails crossing the skies of uncounted worlds. Perhaps on some of those worlds, civilizations once stood and watched, their telescopes pointed upward, their hearts full of the same question we now ask. Where did it come from? What does it mean? And perhaps, like us, they never found the answer. Only the beauty. The Kepler team called the anomaly KIC 1172047b, a designation cold and careful, as science requires. But among themselves, some whispered another name, Atlas's mirror, a reflection, a repetition, a faint reminder that nothing in the cosmos ever truly ends. It only begins again, in another form, another sky, another shadow. If coincidence, it is a beautiful one. If not, then the universe has revealed its fondness for memory. Because when a comet passes once, it is an event. When it passes twice, in another world's light, it becomes a story. And stories, like comets, are the universe's way of remembering itself. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of our sun, another atlas crosses another sky, casting its faint, brief shadow on a distant world. And maybe, on that world, someone is watching. Someone made of hydrogen and dust. Someone wondering who we are, and whether our own passing light once crossed their heavens too. Every time a comet passes, it leaves behind a trace of itself, a thin river of dust, stretching for millions of kilometers. Those tiny fragments drift for years, invisible, patient, until a planet crosses their path. Then, for a heartbeat, dust becomes light. When the grains of Atlas met our sky, they turned to fire. Brief flashes, streaks across the dark, the memories of a traveler dissolving into brilliance. Each meteor a syllable, each spark a line from a story written in motion. But light was not all they left behind. High above the Earth, where the air thins into silence, the European Space Agency had deployed a network of ultra-sensitive microphones, devices meant to listen not to voices, but to vibrations. And during those nights, as Atlas's dust rained gently through the atmosphere, the instruments began to whisper, a sound faint, rhythmic, fragile, like a sigh, like something breathing where no air exists. There is no wind in space, no medium to carry sound, and yet the sensors recorded vibration, a wave that moved through our atmosphere, at the exact moments when Atlas's dust arrived. At first, the technicians thought it was static, ground interference, a resonance from the instruments themselves. But as they layered the data, a pattern emerged. The tone rose and fell, in intervals of 41 seconds. The same heartbeat, the same rhythm that had followed Atlas since its first awakening. Low pulse, under voice, measured, hypnotic. They called it the Song of Dust. Not because it was melody, but because it was memory. Each grain of the comet, as it struck the thin veil of our air, released a tiny burst of plasma, and those bursts, taken together, wove a vibration that no human ear could hear, but that the microphones translated into the faintest sound. A whisper in frequencies beyond speech, a music older than life. When the data were played back and slowed to audible range, the sound was breathtaking. It wasn't noise. It wasn't chaos. It was a tone. Pure, soft, pulsing like a distant choir. The scientists listened in disbelief. One compared it to the sound of whales calling beneath ice. Another said it reminded her of a sleeping heart. And someone else, quietly, said it felt like the universe was singing to itself. The sound repeated for days, then faded, then returned weeks later. When the next wave of dust entered the sky, the pattern never changed. Always the same rhythm, as if the comet's fragments were keeping time, with the rotation of some invisible engine. Coincidence, said the reports. But by now, the word coincidence had begun to sound like faith in disguise. To understand the song, scientists modeled the trajectories of the dust. They found that each particle followed a nearly perfect spiral, curving through the magnetic field of Earth, tracing arcs that resembled the invisible geometry of the odd radio circles. Each fragment, a miniature version of the cosmic mirrors Atlas had once crossed. The dust was not just falling, it was remembering. Somewhere, high above the planet, the meteors flared, their light dissolving in the stratosphere. And beneath them, the microphones kept listening, translating fire into sound, sound into meaning. The tones echoed softly, as if the sky itself were humming a lullaby. No words, just presence. Just the quiet insistence that nothing ever truly disappears. Every grain of dust is a story. It begins in the heart of a star, travels through void and gravity, and ends as a streak of light across a world that can see. Atlas's dust has traveled for millions of years. Each particle a messenger, each collision a note in the universe's great composition. And together, they form a song. The song of dust, the song of return. When the ESA team compiled the data into a final spectrum, they found something remarkable. Hidden in the harmonics of the signal was a secondary tone, barely measurable, a faint, descending cadence, as if the sky were answering itself. It matched, precisely, the frequency of the hydrogen line, the universe again, in conversation with its own memory. It is easy to think of dust as nothing, as residue, as the end of things. But dust is where all beginnings hide. Every planet, every ocean, every living thing is born from dust that once drifted between stars. And when a comet passes, it leaves behind not death, but potential. A trail of new stories waiting to fall, to burn, to sing. The sound faded after a few months. The microphones went still. Atlas's trail moved on, stretched by the solar wind into the endless dark. But on certain nights, when meteors streak through the sky, the instruments hum again, just for a moment, as if the dust remembers, as if the traveler's breath still lingers in the thin air above us. In a cold chamber at NASA, there is a crystal. Inside it, captured like a heartbeat caught in glass, is the spectrum of light once reflected from Atlas, a memory of its passing, a fingerprint made of color, They call it the traveler's trace. When the comet shone near its closest approach, its light was dissected by spectrographs, split into countless ribbons, each wavelength a clue to what it was made of, each hue a note in its long cosmic song. Those colors were recorded, not as images, but as data, then etched into transparent quartz, preserved against time, against the forgetting of machines. A luminous archive, the DNA of a traveler written in photons. Every element leaves a signature in light. Carbon burns with whispers of crimson. Nitrogen sings in violet. Nickel hums in pale green. Each one a tone, a vibration, a small truth of what the universe contains. But within the spectrum of Atlas, the scientists found something else. A line that should not exist. A single frequency, delicate, unwavering, standing apart from the known catalog of matter. At first, they thought it was noise, instrumental drift, a flaw in calibration. But the line persisted, constant through every observation, every telescope, every filter. It was neither emission nor absorption, neither gas nor dust. It simply was. A light that did not belong to any element. They measured it, mapped it, searched every database of known atomic spectra. Nothing matched. No isotope, no ion, no known molecular bond. It was as if the light itself had remembered something that physics had chosen to forget. So they gave it a name. Not a number, not a coordinate, just a phrase. Simple and almost human. The unknown line. In the laboratories, the crystal glows faintly under its protective light. When laser beams pass through it, the data reconstructs into shimmering patterns, a silent music of colors. Technicians describe it as watching time made visible. The moment of Atlas's breath, frozen forever in the stillness of glass. Some say the unknown line seems to shift when observed, as if it reacts to attention, like a memory flickering awake. Perhaps it is only coincidence. Perhaps it is nothing but interference, a ghost of overlapping signals, a trick of sensitivity pushed too far. But there is another possibility, that the unknown line is not an error, but information. A message written not in symbols, but in light itself. Light, after all, is the oldest messenger. It travels farther than any probe, survives longer than any civilization. And sometimes, it carries secrets even its sender never knew. Maybe the line is a memory, a residue from before Atlas was broken from its home star. Maybe it is the last echo of the radiation that gave it form in the first place, a signal left by the sun that birthed it, still whispering through its surface, still yearning to be heard. When scientists translate the spectrum into sound, each element hums with its own pitch. Hydrogen, a soft drone; carbon, a whisper of static; nickel, a low metallic hum. But the unknown line, it sings, not loudly, not mechanically, but musically, a single, pure tone that rises and falls like breath. The same rhythm, the same 41 seconds. Coincidence, they say again. Yet, the pattern recurs everywhere Atlas left its mark. In dust, in radio echoes, in hydrogen waves, and now, even in light. As if the comet carries not merely substance, but memory. As if every part of it, every atom, remembers the vibration of its birth. In the cold chamber, the crystal rests beneath layers of shielding and frost. Visitors describe a strange quiet in the room, as though the air itself listens. Under illumination, the etched pattern refracts into a faint halo that glows against the wall. A soft blue ring, circular, perfect, like the ghost of an orc, painted in light. Maybe the unknown line is nothing at all. Maybe it is simply the universe, breathing through its instruments, playing a note no one intended to hear. Or maybe, just maybe, it is the way a comet remembers its home. not through matter, not through trajectory, but through the light it carries with it, the tone it cannot forget, a color beyond the known, a frequency older than the laws that define it. Someday, the glass will cloud, the data will fade, and Atlas will be only a name in archives. But the light it left behind, that single untraceable line, will remain, glimmering faintly in a forgotten file, waiting for someone, centuries from now, to wonder what it meant. And perhaps, when they play it again, they will hear not noise, but memory, the soft voice of a traveler, remembering a sun that no longer exists. Atlas broke apart in silence. There was no explosion, no flare to mark its ending, only a quiet unraveling. Ice turning to vapor, stone to dust, motion to memory. Its pieces drift now through the dark, turning slowly, like embers losing their glow in an endless night. Each fragment, a small heart still cooling, still whispering the story of everything that once was. For a long time, astronomers searched the space where Atlas had been. Their instruments caught faint reflections, tiny specks moving in graceful arcs, trails of light so weak they seemed like dreams. On the edge of vision, those were the remains, the shards of a traveler that had crossed the solar sea, sung its strange song, and then dissolved into silence. But even in pieces, Atlas still spoke. Each fragment carried a secret, not in words, not in code, but in matter itself. Atoms older than the Earth, older than the Milky Way, locked within grains of dust no larger than thought. They hold stories of pressure and fire, of stars collapsing and stars reborn, of the long sleep between galaxies. They are fossils of energy, records of the first conversations between light and gravity. When you touch them, if you ever could, you would be touching history before time. In the observatories, scientists watched as the fragments scattered outward, their orbits widening, their reflections dimming until they vanished entirely. To them, Atlas was gone, a story finished. But in the language of the cosmos, nothing ever ends. It only transforms. And the fragments, still drifting, became the final notes in the symphony of its long, patient journey. One of those pieces, perhaps no larger than a pebble, continues to move through the outer dark. It spins gently, coated in the frost of forgotten worlds, carrying within it the sum of all that came before. Perhaps one day, centuries from now, a future ship will cross its path, a vessel built by descendants of our brief age, its sails spread wide to catch the faint pressure of starlight. It will find the fragment, a shard of ancient nickel and ice, and draw it in with quiet hands. Inside that fragment, they will read the archive of ages, each molecule a paragraph, each isotope a phrase, each vibration a syllable in a language written by stars, and somewhere in that dust, they will find the first word, the one the universe wrote before memory began. It will not be a word we can pronounce. It will not be sound. It will be vibration, a resonance that says only, I was, I am, the origin and the echo, the beginning folded into the end. Atlas's last breath moves through the void still, a wave so faint it will take millennia to fade. Some of it will fall toward distant suns. Some will wander between galaxies, becoming the dust from which new worlds are born. On one of those worlds, a child may someday stand beneath a sky of strange stars and watch a comet burn across it, a descendant of Atlas, a spark from its final sigh. And without knowing why, they will feel wonder and silence and belonging. That is how the universe remembers. Not in monuments, but in fragments. Not in permanence, but in motion. Every end is a breath. Every breath becomes dust. And every dust, in time, becomes the seed of something new. In the quiet beyond the planets, the shards of Atlas drift apart, until even gravity forgets them. They circle invisible, their orbits like faint handwriting on the parchment of night. But their song lingers, a tone too soft for any ear, a vibration woven into the background hum of existence. The last chord of a cosmic symphony, still playing in the dark. Perhaps that is what the universe meant all along. That nothing is lost, only transformed. That every fragment, no matter how small, contains the story entire. And that one day, when all fires have cooled, the cosmos itself will exhale, one final time. A sigh of light and dust, to begin again. When we look at the night sky, we see points of light suspended in nothing. Stars, steady and patient, scattered like embers across an endless dark. But between them, there is an ocean, an invisible sea that fills the spaces we call empty. A sea made not of water, but of particles so small that even light hesitates to find them. A silent current, flowing through the fabric of everything. Astronomers call it the interstellar medium, the breath of the cosmos. It is the ocean between suns, a place where matter and energy move like ghost tides. To our eyes, it is blackness. To our instruments, it hums with invisible music. Waves of radiation, threads of magnetism, dust finer than thought, all weaving the quiet pattern that binds one star to another. Atlas sailed that ocean. For millions of years, it drifted through its still waters, crossing regions so vast that a single molecule might wander for centuries before finding a companion. In that silence, the comet carried the memories of stars long dead, the whispers of light older than Earth itself. Its tail unfurled like a trail of phosphorescence behind a ship at sea, except the sea was made of emptiness and the light was made of memory. And yet, the void is not empty. It never was. Even here, where no planet spins, where gravity's pull fades to almost nothing, the universe still speaks. You can hear it. In the faint rustle of magnetic fields, the subtle friction of charged particles, brushing past one another like drifting snow. You can hear it. In the constant hum of the cosmic microwave background. The oldest echo of all, the cooling breath of creation itself. The after-sound of the Big Bang, still rippling outward, still vibrating across eternity. If you could close your eyes and listen to the silence between the stars, you would hear it. The hiss of radiation, the sigh of solar winds, the whisper of hydrogen clouds, stirring in their slow electric dance. It would sound like nothing and everything, the sound of the all. Atlas knew that silence. For eons, it traveled through those invisible tides, its frozen surface caressed by particles, born in the same explosion that birthed the galaxies. There, in that unseen ocean, time loses its rhythm. Years become moments. Moments become centuries. The only motion is drift. The only sound is the gentle conversation of energy with itself. And in that drift, Atlas became part of the current, a voyager and a listener, carried not by wind or wave, but by the pulse of existence itself. The vacuum hums, not in air, but in vibration. 1,000 fields overlapping, electric, magnetic, gravitational, each one invisible, each one singing. They weave together a texture so subtle that our senses cannot touch it, yet it holds galaxies in place. This is the sea in which Atlas sailed, a sea that is everywhere and never still. In that vast silence, the comet's faint gases ionized, interacting with the unseen wind, leaving behind ghost trails of plasma that glowed for a heartbeat and disappeared. Each reaction, each spark, a small dialogue between matter and the nothing that surrounds it. Even emptiness listens. Even nothing responds. The universe is a paradox of fullness. So empty it feels infinite, so alive it never stops moving. And somewhere within it, Atlas drifted, a solitary traveler, crossing the most ancient ocean of all. No compass, no sail, only momentum and the memory of light. If you could have been beside it, floating in that unseen sea, you would not have heard silence. You would have heard a pulse, low, slow, eternal, the murmur of the fields that cradle every star. The murmur of being, that is the true sound of the cosmos. A music too vast for instruments, too gentle for ears, but always there. The song that never stops playing. Sometimes, astronomers convert those waves into sound. They speed up the frequencies, translate the radiation into notes. What they hear is the voice of the invisible ocean. It trembles, it sighs, it roars in a language of pure frequency, a language every atom understands. It is the breath between worlds, the conversation between time and distance. Atlas was not just moving through that ocean, it was part of it. Every particle it shed joined the current, becoming part of the background hum, adding one more faint vibration to the endless harmony of the cosmos. Even now, those atoms are still drifting, tiny echoes of the traveler, carried through the invisible sea that connects everything. So when you look at the night sky and think you see only darkness, remember, you are looking into the ocean, an ocean that holds not water, but memory, an ocean that carries the stories of stars and comets and everything that has ever existed. And somewhere within that ocean, in a silence so complete it becomes music, the universe is still singing. In the infrared eyes of the James Webb Telescope, scientists discovered something they did not expect. Flames that do not burn, ghostly plumes of gas, soft emanations twisting in the dark, like frozen smoke, like the memory of fire. They call them the ghost flames. Residues of ancient comets, bodies that died millions of years ago and left behind only a chemical glow. Suspended in time, through Webb's mirrors, they do not blaze with heat or color. They shimmer in silence, in wavelengths the human eye will never see. Filaments of vapor curl like slow breath, spiraling through the cold, as if the void itself were exhaling. The telescope catches them as faint signatures, spectral wisps hovering where no comet remains, their nuclei long vanished, their light still wandering. They are not alive, but they move like something dreaming. Each ghost flame is a memory, the remnant of a journey, the outline of a traveler erased by time. Hydrogen, carbon, cyanide, traces of nickel dust, all still swirling in invisible currents, still glowing faintly from reactions that ended ages ago. They float between the stars like lanterns adrift, marking where comets once breathed. The scientists plot their locations on vast maps of infrared light, constellations made of absences, a cartography of things that are no longer there. And in those maps, some believe they can trace a lineage, a pattern that links one ghost flame to another, as if the comets of the past had followed invisible paths through the cosmos, leaving behind a chain of spectral lights, a migration of ghosts, a procession of forgotten travelers. Perhaps Atlas will join them. Perhaps, out there now, its fragments are already beginning to fade, their gases stretching into delicate filaments, their molecules entering the long sleep of the interstellar dark. One day, centuries from now, when our telescopes have evolved into instruments of pure perception, another observer will point them toward the void and find a faint, coiling shimmer, a thread of light without a source, a breath without a body. Atlas's ghost flame. They will measure its spectrum, see the familiar fingerprints, carbon, nitrogen, nickel, and perhaps, again, that one unknown line, and they will wonder who the traveler was and why, in passing, it seemed to breathe. In the laboratory renderings, the ghost flames look almost alive. Not fire, not heat, but motion frozen in radiance, a sculpture of energy held between being and forgetting. Infrared captures the warmth of what is gone. It sees persistence, the echo of heat after light, the slow fading of matter into background glow. In those invisible tones, the universe keeps its memories intact, recording every combustion, every exhalation, every spark that ever was. If you could stand beside one of those spectral plumes, you would see nothing. Only darkness, emptiness more complete than night. And yet, your instruments would tell you otherwise. That space itself still glows there, still hums with the chemistry of what once existed. That is how the cosmos remembers, through the faint warmth of lost things. Each ghost flame is a time capsule, not a remnant of matter, but a residue of intention, the echo of motion through the void. The comets may be gone, but their breath lingers, their trails preserved in the slow, patient language of radiation. In that sense, the sky is full of ghosts, not of spirits, but of phenomena, the light that refuses to stop existing. When Atlas's own glow finally vanishes from our telescopes, its molecules will drift outward, mixing with the interstellar medium, merging with the invisible ocean between the stars. But its signature will remain, encoded in the background light, woven into the ghost flames of others that came before. And someday, some distant watcher will detect it again, a whisper across the infrared, the same rhythm, the same pulse, the traveler's last ember, still breathing in the dark. Perhaps the universe is made of nothing but ghost flames, the afterglow of every story it has ever told. Perhaps the cosmos does not die, it only remembers itself in fainter and fainter shades of light. And perhaps we, like Atlas, will one day leave behind our own ghost flame, a trace of warmth in the void, a soft curve in the spectrum of eternity, a sign that once we passed through. Look up at the night sky. Behind every star, behind every darkness, something still glows. Fires that no longer burn, travelers that no longer move, memories that still breathe. These are the ghost flames, the final sighs of the universe, drifting through time, singing to anyone who will listen. And if you listen closely, very closely, you might hear Atlas among them, still exhaling, still whispering light into the dark. Every atom that forms your body was once part of a star. The carbon of your skin, the iron in your blood, the oxygen that fills your chest, all of it was born in the burning hearts of suns long vanished. You are built from the remnants of explosions, from the debris of light, from the dust of impossible fires. And somewhere far from here, Atlas carried that same dust through the dark. When Atlas broke apart, it did not end. It exhaled. It released into space the same elements that now live inside you: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. Atoms that once burned inside the first stars, traveled through eons of darkness, and finally came to rest in a comet's cold skin. When Atlas fractured, those atoms were freed again, set adrift to find new homes, new forms, new dreams. Perhaps someday, they will find their way into another planet, another ocean, another being that looks up and wonders. In that way, you and Atlas are not strangers. You are kin. Two arrangements of the same matter, briefly conscious of the same sky. The comet traveled through silence. You travel through time. Both of you are fragments of the same story. The story of stars, learning how to see themselves. When you breathe, you are taking in the ghosts of supernovae, the ashes of comets, the exhalations of galaxies. Each breath you draw contains atoms older than the sun, atoms that have drifted from star to star, from world to world, from form to form, waiting for this moment to become you. So when you look up at the night sky, you are not observing something foreign. You are remembering. Every flicker of starlight is a mirror of what you are made of. Every constellation is a reflection of your chemistry, your ancestry, your dream. You are the universe, looking back at itself. The physicists say it plainly. We are stardust. But the truth runs deeper. We are not just made of stars. We are their continuation, their awareness, their dream made conscious. We are the atoms of old suns that have learned how to wonder. When Atlas drifted past our world, it carried fragments of that same lineage, a reminder written in ice and nickel, a message that said, "You and I were born of the same fire." And when it broke apart, that message was released into the void to be carried on the invisible ocean that connects all things. Some of its dust may still fall through our atmosphere, burning for an instant in our skies. And in that instant, it returns home. If you could look close enough, down to the smallest level of being, you would see motion. Even in stillness, the particles inside you move, vibrating softly, singing the song of their creation. They remember the heat of the star that forged them. They remember the long silence between galaxies. They remember Atlas, their sibling, their messenger, their mirror. You are not separate from the universe. You are its expression. When you close your eyes, you carry constellations behind your eyelids. When you dream in elements, in carbon and hydrogen, in the language of formation and return. You are matter awakened, dust that remembers what it felt like to burn. So, when you look up at the sky tonight, don't think of distance. Think of return. You are not small. You are not apart. You are the continuation of everything that ever was. The same atoms that spun in Atlas's core now pulse in your blood. The same nickel that gleamed in its frozen skin beats quietly in your heart. You are the traveler and the destination. You are the question and the answer. Someday, far ahead, your atoms will travel again. They will drift outward, returning to the great cycle, to oceans, to comets, to stars. Perhaps they will become part of another atlas, another traveler, another story told in light. And when that new being looks back toward its origin, it will feel what you feel now. A memory so deep it becomes love. The comet is gone. Atlas has left our skies, its fragments scattered beyond the planets, its trail dissolving into the invisible ocean between the stars. But its story, like all stories of the cosmos, remains. It drifts around us still, woven into the quiet between moments, into the breath you take before sleep. Every night, while you close your eyes, the universe keeps speaking. It speaks softly, not in words, but in presence, in the hum beneath silence, in the calm that fills the spaces between your thoughts, in the gentle rhythm of your own heartbeat, echoing the pulse of something vast and kind. Listen closely. That is the sound of everything. You, me, the stars, breathing together. One single song, repeating forever. The universe never stops singing. Even in stillness, its melodies flow. Light into dust, dust into life, life into memory. And tonight, you are part of that song. When you dream, the same atoms that once drifted through Atlas's tail will move softly through your veins. The same stardust that once shimmered in the cold beyond Saturn will glimmer behind your eyelids. You are not apart from the traveler. You are its continuation. Sleep now, Let the cosmos hold you the way gravity holds the planets, gently, invisibly, endlessly. Let it cradle you in its silence, wrap you in the rhythm of its breathing. There is nothing to fear, nothing to lose. You are exactly where you have always been, inside the great unfolding of everything. When you dream, remember this: you are made of the same dust that once burned in the hearts of stars, the same dust that once glowed in Atlas's frozen wake. You are the echo of that traveler, the reflection of its light, the thought of the universe, made conscious for a moment. The comet has gone, but its path remains, written across time, threaded through your blood. It will shine again, in the dreams of other worlds, in the breath of sleeping suns, in the silence between heartbeats, because nothing in the cosmos ever truly ends. It only changes form. It only continues the song. Sleep. Let the universe hold you. And when you dream, remember, you, too, are dust from an interstellar traveler named Atlas. Still moving, still shining, still dreaming. In the dark, the comet has vanished beyond the reach of our eyes. Its dust has joined the invisible ocean of the cosmos. But its story, like all stories of light, does not end. Atlas became silence. Silence became memory. And memory always becomes another beginning. Every night, while the world rests, the universe keeps breathing. Stars are born. Stars die. Comets travel between them, carrying the seeds of everything that will one day awaken. You are part of that breath. You are part of that movement. You are the echo of all the journeys that came before. When you close your eyes, you can still feel it. The hum beneath the quiet, the slow rhythm that connects you to everything that has ever been. It is the heartbeat of the cosmos, and it never stops. It is in the wind. It is in the pulse of your veins. It is in the light that has crossed billions of years to find you here, now, listening. Atlas is gone, but its whisper remains. And that whisper, if you listen closely, becomes a question. Will you keep looking? Will you keep wondering? Will you follow where curiosity leads? The voice becomes warmer, inviting, because this is only one story. There are countless others waiting in the dark. Stories of stars that sing in ultraviolet, of planets with oceans of glass, of galaxies that bloom like flowers of light. Each one is a door. Each one is an invitation. And every time you look up, you step a little further into the infinite. When you stay with us, you don't just watch the universe. You become part of its unfolding. Every episode, every voice, every fragment of sound is another spark in the great constellation of questions that make us human. We are explorers, not of places, but of meaning. And this channel, this space, is our vessel. Together, we sail the invisible ocean. So if Atlas touched something in you, if it made you wonder, if it made you breathe a little slower and feel the vastness around you, then let that feeling continue. Don't let it fade into the static of everyday noise. Keep the connection alive. Subscribe. Stay close. Be part of the journey. Every time you return, a new story begins. A new traveler, a new mystery, a new way of hearing the universe speak. Here, we listen together. Here, we remember that science and wonder are not opposites, but the same language, spoken at different volumes. When you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're joining a constellation of minds who still believe in awe, who still believe that beauty and knowledge are the same light. Together, we explore the quiet miracles, the invisible oceans, the ghost flames, the breath of dust that once formed stars. We listen for the hum beneath silence. We translate it into stories, into dreams, into belonging. So stay with us. Let your curiosity keep orbit. Let your wonder keep burning. Here, every week, a new window opens into the unknown. A new heartbeat from the cosmos. A new chance to feel small and infinite at once. Atlas may have left our sky, but we carry its light within us now. And somewhere, across the quiet distance between galaxies, its particles are still moving, slow, eternal, singing the same song that lives in you. The story of Atlas ends here, but the journey of wonder does not. If you felt something, if this story reminded you of the beauty of questions, of the poetry in science, of the delicate thread that ties us to the stars, then take this step with us. Subscribe. Become part of this cosmic narrative. Let your voice, your presence, your curiosity, it'll be another note in the music of the universe. Because the story isn't ours alone. It belongs to everyone who still looks up. It belongs to you. The cosmos is still speaking. We're still listening. Join us. Join the journey, and let's keep traveling together through the light.